Well, good afternoon. So, finally, we come to it. The Astral Blades video that I've been writing up for the past few months. I've thought a lot about how to go about this video because it's more of the more personal videos that I've done because we're going into some of my own writing right now and breaking it apart and seeing what we have underneath the surface. So, for me, this is really cool. It's taken me a while because it's been like I tend to write like tides on a shore. Like, the tide will come in and will go out because I give up on it, and then I come back again. And each time I do it, the tide gets a bit further up towards the beach. And right now, I think I'm in a pretty good place. I'm going to split this video up into two. What we're going to do first is we're going to do a brief overview of the world that our chapter, our current or our only channel Space Marine chapter comes from, what their culture is like, what their people are like, or what they were like before things fell apart so categorically. And then we'll go into reading directly from the lore that I wrote, and throughout, rather than doing what other very talented people like Luton do and other people like that, rather than giving you the lore direct, I will be interspersing it with my own thoughts as a writer, because I think we're in a very privileged position to, on our channel, we get to speak to writers, right? So if somebody on our channel writes some Warhammer lore, we can actually go and ask them, oh, what inspired you to do that, and this and that, right? And so I'll be giving you my own inspirations going through as we're getting through the story itself. So I hope that doesn't break your immersion too much when we're going through the lore. If I stop for a minute and say, this is what the I like to not interpret things for you. So I'll come up with something in the lore, and then I'll say, okay, this is what it actually looks like from a modern standpoint, where the way we're looking at it. So, all of the credits for the music will be in the bottom of the description. I've used some Kevin MacLeod music, which is pretty cool, but I've also used music from a guy called Acoustic Labs, who is insanely good. Very, very, very good. And he is the full links will be in the description to all of his work. Go check him out. He's really cool. I study to his music all the time and do marking to it all the time. It really, really chills me out. So if you're looking for chill out music to write to, whether it be sci-fi or whatever, that is a really good place to go and start, to be honest with you. So without further ado, let's get started with the Astral Blade. So we'll be seeing artwork as we go through the Astral Blade story, and eventually we will be getting to models as well. I took photographs of the other day that are nearly finished, almost done. So, first of all, let me read you the blurb on the front of the Homebrew Codex that I've been writing. So, the Astral Blades. Seeking truth by the edge of a blade, honour-bound and despises of secrets and lies, the Astral Blades were abandoned to die by their progenitors in the Dark Angels on the purging battlefields of the World of Defiance. They emerged as a chapter of one. The Silver Knight Kentaro Santigar had led the people of the world to cast off the demonic threat. His reward was rebuilding his chapter in his own image. To this day, the Astral Blades seethe against their former allies, left to die on a battlefield by those they called brothers. Insular and nomadic, the chapter has always had a distinct hatred for lies and secrecy. This nature of theirs saw the Dark Angels abandon them to death in the raging fires of Exterminatus. With the coming of the Primaris Marines, the chapter of Blade Masters has seemingly returned from the dead. Now, with vengeance burning bright within them, the Astral Blades name all those of the Lion's bloodline to be fallen, traitors to the Imperial cause. They hunt them with abandon, just as they do other renegades and heretics that pour forth from the great rift that ruined their world. To the once proud Astral Blades, little stock is put in the blood of the Lion. Their Primarch, only the blood of Defiance is precious to them. Only by the edges of their own blades can the wrongs of the past be corrected once more. So, I think you get a sense of what the Astral Blades are all about. Okay, they are a dying chapter. I've always found dying chapters to be extremely interesting to me, rather than ones that are on, you know, a huge rampage, or they got loads of numbers, things like that. I like people like the Black Templars and people like that. They got their own niche, but I like chapters that are precious because there's only a few of them left, you know. But for that, they're even more powerful as they're going into things. You may be able to notice, and by the way, if you've got a piece of art in this video, I've tried to make sure that your name is in it somewhere. So, you know, if it's on there, thank you very much. And this is for reference only. So these are not... the colour scheme, for instance, of this Space Marine is not what the Astral Blades look like. Okay? They are a silver and purple faction. But in terms of the armour makeup and things like that, the relic pieces of armour that they used to have before being annihilated and, you know, having to take on lots of Primaris recruits, this is essentially what the chapter used to look like. So a very feudal Japan feeling army coming through here. Okay? And moving into some more art as well, just so you can see some of the conversion pieces that will be getting done as in the coming months. Okay? Alright. So, if we look at the actual stats of the Astral Blades, you know, their founding is termed as the Ultima Founding 999M41. Of course, that wasn't their original founding, okay? The original founding was far, far before then. But let's go on to some of the normal, shall we? The normal lore. In terms of the Silver World of Defiance, the home world of the Astral Blades. Before we go any more. Alright. So. Once a world of violent ice storms, soaring mountain ranges, frosted emerald plains, and countless forests of autumnal blossom trees, Defiance was, and is, home to the Astral Blades, the Wardens of the Acheron Pass. The Acheron Pass, this is a stable region of space leading out from the Eye of Terror, and was never large enough to be used in a full-scale Black Crusade, but its constant stream of warbands and renegades created the necessity for the foundation of the Astral Blades in the 13th Dark Founding in Millennium M36. Okay, so we're at least 4,000 years old at the coming of the Black Crusade. Defiance itself, if you're looking in the galaxy map, by the way, so you're looking towards the northwestern part of the galaxy map of the Imperium, just outside the Eye of Terror, before the Great Rift happens. So we're talking around there. As such, Defiance is itself warped a little bit by the energies of, well, the warp. So this natural... In fact, I'll do a bit more reading and you get a better picture of what I'm saying. Defiance itself was separated into many feudal warring kingdoms, fighting both each other and their chaotic monsters that arose from the depths of the world's crust. Despite its devastating beauty, the world of Defiance was a place of near constant open warfare, as mounted cavalry, knights, and men-at-arms clashed for the vast mineral adamantium resources that lay just below the world's surface. So, it is known also as a pulsing world, so Defiance seems to glow every now and again with an ethereal blue light. That's because the adamantium that is stored underneath the planet's surface is so vast in quantity that the actual psychic energies coming from the Eye of Terror sort of pulse through the world and create this really ethereal looking, almost like the Northern Lights, but they're in the sky at all times. It's a beautiful place, but it is devastatingly dangerous. So you have underneath the rents in the surface, to go down and get the adamantium, the Astral Blades have to go down there and cull teeming amounts of chaos demons and different monstrosities that have been touched by the warp, just to get at this adamantium that can then be mined for their own uses and for the Imperium's uses. So imagine a world of these clashing kingdoms, each using blade, lance, bolter, and shields to fight over territory and living space, innumerable banners flying in the winds of this verdant world that is as beautiful as it is deadly, constantly battered by Arctic storms. The cold climate of Defiance means that the vast inland seas were seen as near paradises that steam with heat, fresh and pure. Each kingdom fought over such rich territory, as well as the adamantium peaks that soar into the skies of the world that seems to always have skies that either radiate dawn or bleed the deepest sunset. So it is a place of vibrant colours. You know, it is a world of autumnal beauty, is what I would say. Or at least it used to be. There are still pockets that are like that these days, but the Great Rift has done a number on poor Defiance over the years. But yes, this used to be we called them the steaming seas. So the seas around which these kingdoms form were all heated, superheated by magma running underneath the planet's surface all the time. It is quite a violent world in terms of its tectonic activity. And so this sea is constantly warm and constantly fresh, which is why the kingdoms are fighting over its territory so virulently. Okay. The cold climate of Defiance okay, yeah. So we've done that bit already. Okay. I'll read that bit anyway. Read it again. The cold climate of Defiance means that the vast inland seas were seen as near paradises that steam with heat, fresh and pure. Each kingdom fought over such rich territory, as well as the adamantium peaks that soar into the skies of this world that seems always to have skies that either radiate dawn or bleed the deepest sunset. Okay. This was the world that gave birth to the Astral Blades and the cold-hearted warrior aristocracy that gives the chapter its numbers and honour-bound code. One thing united the world of Defiance: the Astral Blades themselves. Upon sacred compacts issued at the birth of Defiance's entry into the Imperium of Man with the High Lords of Terror, the only tithe taken from Defiance would be fresh recruits for the Astral Blades. The Astral Blades still follow the practice today of selecting recruits only from the upper echelons of Defiance's ruling warrior class. Although those left after ages of warfare and purges are few. The prestige and value of each noble house of Defiance is measured by how many sons they have sent to the Astral Blades, who make their transition to full Astartes status. So, the reason for it's kind of self-imposed actually. The reason for the Astral Blades dying off is that they are quite haughty and arrogant. Like they don't allow just anybody to join the Astral Blade. You not anybody can just become an Astral Blade. That's not how it works. You're selected as a son of a noble house of Defiance. Every son is selected and made to go through the trials and join the chapter one way or the other. It could either be through becoming an Astartes, obviously, as a chapter serf, as a menial, as a tech adept, as anything. You are serving the chapter. That is why Defiance has such a rigid feudal structure and such a rigid lower class of serfs, because they have to support the chapter. They have to support the nobles of the land, because the nobles are supporting the Astral Blades. And the Astral Blades are the only thing keeping horrid demonic things from overwhelming the world itself. Right? And you ask us why? Why do people stick around on Defiance then? Well, remember, the only Imperial tithe coming from Defiance are recruits to the Astral Blades. It's Adeptus Non in terms of its requirement to give tax to the Imperium. Which means the people of Defiance can sell their adamantium that isn't used already by the chapter at whatever rates they like to whoever they like. Within the Imperium, of course. Right? This makes them incredibly rich. So we have a rich merchant class, still serfs, still serving the people above them, as in the nobility. But the nobility have a lot of time to pursue the one thing that is seen as sacred to them. And that is warfare. So the nobility of Defiance are only focused on warfare, on producing strong warriors. Which is why the planetary defense force of Defiance is made up mostly of women. Because most of the noble ladies of the noble houses of Defiance join the planetary defense force. Right? And the Defense Force are literally called the Ladies of the House. The Ladies of the House means, obviously, you know, every house has their own PDF. Has their own flak-armoured, you know, badass ladies who defend the world from anything and anything that is terrestrial, whilst the Astral Blades defend it from all threats all over the place. And defend the entire sector, really, from the actual incoming hordes of chaos that may be impending doom at some stage, shall we say. Alright, so let me just so we can get a picture of what some of the normal warriors on Defiance look like. This is what they look like. So, kind of like this. So you have people out. This is more of a modern day warrior of Defiance. So this is somebody who is from the serf class, who is, you know, recruited into being a warrior for one of the noble houses. And this is the kind of thing that you'll be seeing on Defiance nowadays. Back in the day, we used to see very flowing garments and beautiful pieces of armor and all this sort of thing. Defiance nowadays is a much more brutal place than it used to be, as we will get into as we go throughout the lore. But this is what you'll be running into nowadays. If you look at the PDF, the Planetary Defense Force, and other mercenary groups who keep, you know, who keep people in check on Defiance. Defiance is still a very, very, very rich world, despite it being ruined by the Great Rift. And so it still needs protecting, much to the chagrin of the Astral Blades, who these days wish they were anywhere but on Defiance, taking heads. And they are, most of the time. Right, so let's pull it back down to the heirs of Defiance. To ensure a full measure of recruits, almost all children born of the ruling elite of Defiance were artificially inseminated and engineered to produce strong male offspring. Okay? This means that, you know, quite a lot, about 60 to 80% of the time, males are the preferred, you know, sex when being birthed. Healthy and strong females were traded with the world for its vast mineral wealth and with representatives from other cultures and even the serf classes of Defiance being presented as surrogate mothers for the next generation of Astral Blades recruits. Alright, so we have women being brought in from off-world who are of superior genetic stock. We have women from the serf class who prove themselves as warriors or in the PDF or things like that, being given over to a certain noble house for the honour of giving birth to a baby boy who will go on to become an Astral Blade one day, perhaps. Which is why, because of the low numbers of the intake, because of the low numbers, they're only selecting from the maturity, from the best of Defiance. They need more mothers, essentially, to be they play a vital role in making sure that the chapter is on its feet at all times. Boys who joined the Astral Blades were usually taken as soon as they reach biological maturity, so early teenage years, essentially. So essentially, you know what starts happening when you get into puberty, right? You know, you start to mature sexually and things like that. A sample of their seed was then taken to be used in the insemination process as they join the chapter to begin their line anew. So, what the Astral Blades do is, if somebody makes it to be an Astartes, they say, right, cool. They take seed from everybody who is trying to become an Astartes, and if you don't make it, they just discard it. Right, okay, we're not going to use that. And if you do make it, then they use that as a prime. They say, okay, this is prime genetic stock. This is a really strong warrior who can go on, in mind and body, who can then go on and become an Astartes. So we're going to use this to inseminate more boys of his bloodline, essentially, of that noble house. Which is why the wealth and prestige of a noble house is dictated by how many boys they have in the Astral Blades. Because the more boys you have in the Astral Blades, the more boys you will get in the Astral Blades, and the stronger your bloodline is seen as being, essentially. Okay, so I'll read that bit again, just so you can, you know. Boys who joined the Astral Blades were usually taken as soon as they reached biological maturity. A sample of their seed was taken to be used in the insemination process as they join the chapter to begin their line anew. This is why, within the chapter, there are two types of familial lines: purebloods and wardborn. Purebloods, of which the current chapter master is one, are children naturally born to families of the noble class on Defiance. Treasured and trained from the time they can walk, they are celebrated when they leave to begin their attempt to become Astral Blades. So these are kids, just like in the Matrix where he says, you know, me and Dozer are good old-fashioned, homebred human born right here in the real world. Well, that's what purebloods are. You know, so a mum and a dad get together, and they're both from noble families. They have a son. That's considered a pureblood, right? He's not been artificially inseminated. This is just a natural-born child who's come out, okay? All right. Wardborn are children born of artificial insemination, who are taken to become Astral Blades. These youths are housed as wards by the noble family with which their genetic line belongs. Brought up beside pureblood brothers, these warriors-to-be forge indelible links with those that they may one day fight beside. So, a wardborn is everybody else. So, if a genetic seed is taken from somebody who became an Astral Blade, and is then given to a mother, quote-unquote, who has been brought into a noble family from elsewhere. She then gives birth. You are then of that noble house. You are a wardborn, you're not a pureblood, but you are of that noble house, right? It's very important to note that when you get into the Astral Blades, this distinction is wiped away. Everybody is the same when you're in the Astral Blades. Sometimes it doesn't quite work like that, because the people will always like identify with their own upbringing. But the reason why purebloods and wardborn are brought up together is to make sure that, okay, you guys are one unit, you're brothers, you're together, and that's where you are now, and you were all going to go and try and be Astral Blades. This is why the Astral Blades seem so close-knit when compared to other Astartes chapters. The makeup of the chapter is quite literally made up of fathers and sons, uncles and nephews, linked brothers in blood both spilled, and that running through their veins for the most part. Right? So this is a very rare thing. The Astral Blades are actually related to each other, for the most part. We have brothers and sons, uncles and fathers and all sorts, right? Everybody is sort of related, okay? Right. Almost all Astral Blades are related in some way thanks to their self-imposed low numbers of their human stock options. Once the Astral Blades numbered well over 1,000 Marines, alright? They've never been Codex Astartes compliant. But today, the lack of human numbers on Defiance ensures this number may never reach over 500. Alright? Bit sad, but there we are. Alright, so that's Defiance so far. Let me give you some models. Why not? Let me give you some models. So we have the Chapter Master Kentaro Santagar here. Looking pretty badass. That will be a Dark Angel underneath him eventually when I get some Dark Angels paint. But yeah, that is Kentaro Santagar. He is wielding Fireblade, and we'll get into Fireblade at some point. But the blade in his left hand is the blade that Fulgrim used, and it was actually made by Ferrus Manus. But we will get into that, I think, in the next episode, not this one, when he actually claims Fireblade. But yeah, anyway. The next part of the lore about Defiance is the sight, which is very important to why the Astral Blades are considered to be some of the best bladesmen, or the best bladesmen, perhaps, in the Imperium. And I stand by that. Right? I like armies that are specialized. So, the Astral Blades are a normal Space Marine chapter in almost everything. Okay? They'd match other Space Marine chapters in almost every other way. You know, bolter drills, things like that, you know, because they're Space Marines at the end of the day. But the one thing they excel in is dueling. Sword to sword, blade to blade, whatever it is. Hammer to blade, whatever, right? Dueling, gaining a read on their opponent and killing them. And I would put a normal Astral Blade up against almost any other Space Marine in the galaxy as a swordsman. Because they're not just brought in as Space Marines and then taught how to fight, which as other Space Marines are, you know, they're brought in and then, you know, they learn on the job. No. They're trained from the time they can walk to hold a sword and to fight and to actually be duelists, be master swordsmen. So even the chapter serfs are expert swordsmen. and they're made to train and fight with blades. Even chapter serfs. Everybody, even remotely connected to the Astral Blades, is a master swordsman. Especially the Astral Blades themselves. Alright, so the sight. The presence of the Eye of Terror to Defiance has been a blessing in that the skills of her warriors are always kept sharp, thanks to the demonic taint, going in a lot of the creatures that are running around on the planet. But it is also a curse thanks to the rampant plague of psychers that are born to the world each and every year. This aberration is so prominent now that almost no male on the world is born without a latent form of psychic potential nestling deep within them. This gift, on Defiance, often takes the form of visions that begin as vague premonitions that almost always come true, a strange deja vu that the warrior notices as they grow older. By the time such warriors are trading blows in the practice cages and dueling on duelist temples of Defiance, this gift has honed itself through combat to become what is known as the sight. This sight allows a warrior of Defiance to see a few seconds ahead in time through their mind's eye during heightened periods of stress, usually in the form of a duel or combat to the death. Whilst undoubtedly a boon to a warrior, the Blade Masters of Defiance are taught to ignore the sight when not fighting to the death, and to instead hone their prodigious talents with the flame-born swords of their homeworld. Overuse of the sight, you see, can and does lead to madness. When you look into the eye, you must be mindful that the eye always looks back into you. This is the blessing and the great flaw of the chapter. Many brothers have fallen over time to ranting madness, only to be put down by the Forlorn Watchers, the Terminator elite of the Silver Sabres. So, the Silver Sabres were once a warrior sect on Defiance, but we'll ignore that for now. So, that is their main flaw. It is a boon as well. Don't get me wrong. So when a Astral Blade loses control of themselves and their mind during combat, they start to see a few seconds ahead in their mind's eye what's coming and what's going to happen. It's almost as if the duel slows down for them if they're being pushed, right? And when I say if they're being pushed, I mean like if they're about to die, they start to go into like what sort of a sleep, a warrior state where they just move without thinking, and this is why they're able to take on and beat sword to sword, blade to blade, probably any other Space Marine or any other duelist within the Imperium, or probably outside of it. If you're looking at a normal Astral Blade, would probably get killed by, a Lucius the Eternal or something like that, probably. But I'd still I'd still give the Astral Blade a good chance. A Kentaro Santagar, a Chapter Master of the Astral Blades, is another thing entirely. That is someone who is more than capable of taking down warriors 5 or 6 times his power level if it's a one-on-one fight. If it's a one-on-one fight with a sword, he's more than capable of taking down warriors that are many, many, many times more powerful than him if they're foolish enough to fight him one-on-one. Right? Okay. So, we're getting into the actual lore now. So, here we go. The Age of Darkness. As you can probably tell, things aren't going to go that well for the old Astral Blades. The Age of Darkness. So, by this stage, the Astral Blades have been a very... How do I put it? Have been a very reliable chapter in the Imperial Annals. They have essentially been doing missions and going on crusades and all those normal things that Space Marines tend to do, right? They've done a really good job of holding down the Acheron path, like the Acheron gate, which lets warbands and other sort of filth into the Imperium. But the Age of Darkness changes all that. The Great Rift, okay? The coming of the Cicatrix Maledictum, or the Great Rift, clove the galaxy in two at the height of the powers of the Astral Blades in the northern quadrant of the Eye of Terror's reach, So at this point, the Astral Blades are at the height of their numbers and the height of their power. For thousands of years, the chapter had annihilated renegade warbands as they escaped the Eye, and devastated several large Drukhari cabals operating in this far-flung arena of the Imperium. They had prided themselves as an isolationist and xenophobic bastion without any need of support from the greater Imperium. Lords of the savage frontier, they neither wanted nor needed interference or aid from other Imperial forces. The Great Rift was a devastating blow to the chapter that it would never truly recover from. Okay? As a whole, the entire planet, by the way, so as a whole, let me just come back to here. As a whole, Defiance was pulled into the expanding Eye of Terror, and within months transitioned to be so deep within the Eye that warp space and the material world overlapped constantly across its surface, causing it to buckle under the strain. Legions of monstrosities beneath Defiance's crust burst forth as hordes of Khorne's champions assaulted the proud citadels of the kingdoms, seeking to bathe the Astral Blades in a tide of blood. If anybody knows anything about our friend Khorne, he is trying to lure the Astral Blades to his side through sheer amount of bloodshed and trauma. So, this leads to the Defiance Wars. Alright. So, for 2 centuries, the Astral Blades fought a near constant war on the bombarded and ruined planet of Defiance. Leading the planetary armies as feudal warlords, they pushed back the tides of Khorne again and again, bringing unwitting joy to the Blood God with the scores of demons they fought in personal combat. Over the centuries, however, the Astral Blades fell one by one under the never-ending tide of Khorne's mighty embrace. Street by street, town by town, city by city, kingdom by kingdom, the great houses of Defiance were falling, swallowed by the bloodthirster-led hordes of the Blood God. Alright? So, we'll show you what it looks like after. So this is the current state of Defiance, unfortunately. The Kingdom of Amber, known as the Last Kingdom by the forces arrayed there, sat squat against the Creed Mountains that housed the fortress monastery of the Gallows, home of the Astral Blades. It was to here that the wounded and non-combatants were taken by the local planetary defense forces, as the Astral Blades and the armies of the kingdoms fought desperate battles to slow down the tide of flame-clad darkness. Among them was the chapter master Galerian Saito, and his young chief librarian Hanso Valerius, both slaying demons by the score as they beheaded horde after horde of Khorne's children in virulent crossfires and raids. They would use the rage of the demons against them, presenting them tempting targets and civilian casualties before cutting them off, surrounding them, and slicing them to pieces by the thousands. The tide, however, was inexhaustible. Alright? You'll notice something about the naming conventions of the Marines as well as we're going forwards, which is pretty cool. But anyway, moving forwards. At the summit of the Gallows, after almost 2 centuries of constant fighting, the Astral Blades were finally spent. Barely 100 survived now, and the chapter command decided to use an artifact known as the Vigil to tear open a hole in warp space to pull the remnants of the world back into the material universe. The Vigil was a beacon from the Dark Age of technology, similar to the Pharos in its design, but one that instead of guiding ships, actively allowed objects to traverse the barriers between the Immaterium and real space. Long defunct and considered dangerous, it was housed at the very summit of the Gallows. Only in this final and desperate hour did the Astral Blades seek to use it to spit in the face of Khorne as they died. So, if you don't know what the Pharos is, it was a beacon used by Guilliman on the eastern fringes of the Imperium during the Horus Heresy. And it basically acted like a sort of Xenos bred Astronomicon. You know, it wasn't an Astronomicon, obviously it was just a beacon guiding ships to to Ultramar. So anyway, as a horde of bloodthirsters burst through the hallowed halls of the precincts, the librarius of the Astral Blades linked their minds, their souls burning out into a cacophony of terrible and miasmic power as a warp portal was torn in the fabric of the Eye of Terror. The only librarian to not take part in the ritual, Kentaro Santagar, instead patrolled around it, slaying any demon that came too close as his brothers died all around him. Finally, mercifully, it was over. The wrecked world of Defiance emerged into real space once more, pulsating with ethereal energies and still near the Eye of Terror. The librarius of the Astral Blades was utterly spent, the vigil shattered into 1,000 pieces. Now the fight against the demons redoubled in earnest as their grip on the material plane weakened. Galerian Saito, the chapter master, led his forces from the gallows to strike back at them. Kentaro Santagar was named the new chief librarian for his efforts in slaying the bloodthirster known as Kolzar as it attempted to stop the vigil ritual. The bodies of the librarians, known to the Astral Blades as the Eight, still stand petrified as a reminder of their sacrifice as the blasted remains of the mountaintop on which the gallows sits. Okay, so the Astral Blades now start to push back the demons, but there are a lot of demons. So it's going to be a fight that's either going to go on for a long time, but the Astral Blades at this point, what they've done is they've earned the right to die with honor, essentially. And maybe give their people a chance to push these demons off the world now that they're already being banished thanks to them being outside of the Eye of Terror. So now comes the entry of the Dark Angels. All right. The Betrayal. High in orbit above the world, the librarius of the Dark Angels had detected a huge emergence of demonic entities in this region of space. And not only that, they had detected the presence of a fallen known as Alaric the Eternal, his psychic signature singing through the warp, emerging from the Vigil Rift. So, as the world is pulled back into real space, the Dark Angels sense the presence of Alaric the Eternal, who is on Defiance. Unbeknownst to the Astral Blades, of course. The Dark Angels, under the leadership of Astorian, Grandmaster of the Third Company, known as the Unmerciful, made planetfall to Defiance and harried the demons shielding Alaric the Eternal. Such was the power of Alaric that the Third Company were unable to contain him. Instead, he fled deeper into the demonic horde, protected by countless entities of Khorne. Without a single word, the enraged Dark Angels returned to their fleet and examined the planet below, already receiving warrants and requests of aid from the Astral Blades fighting on the planet. The planet was a burning mess of demonic taint and corruption. The Astral Blades were pushing the horde back, but not enough. Soon, Alaric would escape justice. With a heavy heart but a determination of granite, Astorian unleashed Exterminatus on the world, annihilating what was left of its embattled contenders on the once radiant and the once radiant beauty it held. All died in fire and brimstone as the Dark Angel's fleet scanned for life signs. They found nothing. Leaving the system, the Dark Angel's Third Company were able to report that Alaric had been neutralized and, unfortunately, the Astral Blades had been lost. Amongst the rubble, however, deep beneath the surface of Defiance, Kentaro Santagar lay unconscious. Before the final Exterminatus, Chapter Master Galerian had sent the young librarian to the bowels of the gallows with every human survivor, whilst the rest of the Astral Blades held off the demonic tide. Once there, he sealed his people within, 30,000 of the ruling aristocracy of Defiance buried, huddled and desperate, deep within the crust of their world. When the Exterminatus had arrived, the psychic scream and backlash of all of his brothers being annihilated hurtled Kentaro into unconsciousness. After some time, the people of Defiance dug their way out of the gallows and carried Kentaro on a gurney back to the upper precincts of the now bare and blasted Fortress Monastery. So, unfortunately, we do see an end to the old Astral Blades here, which is, you know, unfortunate. But, moving on. The sons of Medusa arrive. After months of recuperation in the blasted palaces and of Defiance, the survivors had laid the unconscious Kentaro in state within one temple complex known as Mercuria. This was the only other area on the world left untouched by the Exterminatus, thanks to its nature of being cut into the very rock of a dense mountain range. Within was the shared gene stock of the Astral Blades, along with the last Marine of the chapter known to still be alive. That is, of course, Kentaro Santagar. Before long, interest came to the world from the burgeoning Eye of Terror. A chaos warband of Emperor's children, led by Julius Caesauron. Okay, if you've read any of your Horus Heresy novels, you know who Julius Caesauron is. They made planetfall to take the gene seed for themselves. The people of Defiance put up a stubborn resistance, but they could not stand against traitor Marines. Just as the Emperor's children were about to break the inner sanctum of Mercuria, however, black-clad drop pods slammed into the world's blasted surface. Warriors of the Iron Hands chapter hurled themselves at the Emperor's children, having stalked them from the sector as they left the Eye of Terror. Iron Captain Brask led Clan Cargill against the Emperor's children, driving into them as they were seemingly overwhelmed by the numbers of the traitors on the field. As Julius Caesauron, ancient champion of the Third Legion, crossed blades with Brask, he drove him back again and again, taking the captain's arm and hurling him through the barred doors of Mercuria. Amongst the smoke and dust of the doorway, however, another figure stepped forwards, wielding an ancient blade taken from the walls of the temple. Kentaro Santagar, burning with a psychic fire that scorched most of the Emperor's children who looked at him, charged into the traitor Marines with a feral howl and began cutting them apart. Finally, he and Caesauron crossed blades, the ancient fire blade of Caesauron easily biting into the ancient steel Kentaro had found. The Astral Blade, however, was a changed man. He let go of his sword, grabbed Caesauron's head, and plunged his teeth into the front of the champion's laughing throat, and with a gurgling roar ripped it from the bone of his enemy's neck. Blood spurted, and Caesauron staggered away, giggling and choking before finally falling to his knees and then pitching forwards onto his face. Kentaro bent down and retrieved Fireblade, hefting it awkwardly thanks to its size, and hurled himself into the fray. As demons began to pour from rifts opened by the Emperor's children, several spears of silver light slammed into the tumult as Brask and Kentaro fought back to back in the press. The Grey Knights cut down all around them to drive the demons back to the warp. The Emperor's children dragged the twitching body of Caesauron back through another rift before slamming it shut behind them. So the Grey Knights have arrived, finally, on Defiance. Standing in the ruins of his world, covered in blood, Kentaro staggered to Brask and presented him with Fireblade, unable to lift it any longer. He fell into unconsciousness once more. In the coming months, the Grey Knights would exterminate many of the last of Defiance's nobility in case they suffered from any demonic taint, but Kentaro Santagar was taken to Titan to face his own forlorn judgment. Only 100 families were permitted to remain on Defiance thanks to their survival of the Grey Knight's prudent psychic screening, and even these were to be closely watched by an Inquisitor of the Order Malleus, Lord Inquisitor Riven, who took Mercuria as his personal palace residence after moving the chapter's gene seed stocks, after screening, to the Shattered Gallows. Today, the families of Defiance live almost entirely within the gallows as serfs, chapter menials, squires, and aspirants. So, we have a world of beautiful feudal kingdoms that is now literally a forlorn world of lost majesty, essentially. So, Sadness, I know. But there we are. Right. Let's carry on, shall we? Oh, one sec. We're going to come away from... Well, we're going to stick with Kentaro for a little while, and then we'll discover one more character, and then we'll go and talk about the chapter as a whole. So, a vigil on Titan, right? So we're moving the story to Titan now, and we're moving the story back over to Kentaro Santagar for a time. Okay. Let me just... There we go. There we are. Okay, so... For decades on Titan, homeworld of the Grey Knight and the Ordo Malleus, Kentaro Santagar was screened, tortured, and scoured for any trace of demonic taint. What alarmed the Inquisitors was not that he had survived, but that whilst his psychic signature was that of a standard Astartes librarian, his powers, when exercised, put many Grey Knight Grandmasters to shame in their potency. Okay? So, the reason for this, for many years, was considered to be demonic influence. But as the years ticked by... with Kentaro serving faithfully as a Grey Shield, even aiding the Grey Knights in several missions, the reasons for his erratic powers became more apparent. Kentaro said nothing of his time in the warp, the memories too painful to countenance. Only when he was told that Riven, the Inquisitor left on Defiance, would slaughter his people one by one until he gave the Inquisition an insight into the chapter's time in the warp, did Kentaro finally speak of his struggles there. It was revealed to the Inquisition that the Astral Blade had been gone from real space for 225 standard years in the warp, but that only 5 years had passed in real space. Okay. So I'm going to leave that one there for now. Cool. When the Inquisition took tissue samples of their guest, they found that his words were true. Even scrying his memories revealed that once more he was telling the truth. Lord Inquisitor Falco of the Ordo Malleus postulated that the extreme pain and mental scarring of the conflict in the warp and the mind-shattering effect of losing his entire chapter almost at once had unlocked the full potential of Kentaro's psychic powers. In essence, when Kentaro used his gifts in combat, he was forced to relive memories that caused his psychic talent to burn at extreme levels. Finally satisfied, the Inquisition gave Kentaro a simple choice: join Inquisitor Falco as a member of his personal guard, or return to Inquisitor Riven on Defiance to rebuild his chapter. Unsurprisingly, the last son of Defiance chose the latter. The return of Rebute Gilliman and the Era Indomitus had ensured that new gene stock and even fresh Marines in their entirety would soon make their way to Defiance to bolster what was seen as a chapter on the very brink of extinction. Okay. That is the end of Kentaro's story for now. But now we're going to talk about another character called Takeda Saito. You might remember Galerius Saito, who died earlier on in our story in the Exterminatus, but we will look at this. Our next piece is called The Wolf of Defiance. In the decades of rebuilding on Defiance, the Lord Inquisitor Riven looked over his new estates, overseeing the work of raising the fortress monastery once more, and requisitioning void shields to be built into the blasted earth to protect it and his new holdings at Mercuria. It was not long before he sent something deep within the rubble. A barely audible psychic signature all of its own. After exploring with his own cadre of henchmen, he found deep within the blasted ruins of Defiance another lost Astral Blade on the brink of death. After healing this Marine and scouring him for demonic taint, it was revealed that this was the grandson of the last chapter master Galerian Saito, by the name of Hakeda Saito. He had been buried in rubble at the onset of the Exterminatus order, there to struggle and rage. A massive warrior wielding the ancient sword of House Saito, known as Riftbreaker. That was as large as he was. Hakeda was brought into the service of Riven and told of the survival of Kentaro Santagar. Hakeda Saito, the Lone Blade. Riven taught Hakeda over the years that Kentaro spent on Titan. He trained him on the banishment of demons using his psychic talent, the rites of admonishment, and other litanies that could tear a demon to shreds. He bestowed upon him the ancient set of Order Malleus Artificer armor, an ancient set of Order Malleus Artificer armor, and allowed him to carry a writ of inquisitorial decree, allowing him passage on any ship and to be given any assistance needed. His task was simple: hunt down demons that had escaped the Great Rift into Imperium Nihilus with Riven. For many decades, the two would travel throughout the Dark Imperium, striking down demons of all shapes and sizes. When the demon Primarch Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children annihilated much of the chapter's gene seed during the Acheron War, it was Hakeda Saito who was given leave to hunt down the ancient Bane in the Emperor's sight. He hunts him still, but that is a story for another time. For now, Hakeda hunted with his master, Lord Inquisitor Riven, and relished in the punishment of demon and traitor alike. So, there are two Astral Blades left. Hakeda Saito, who is always behind, like a mask-like piece of armor, so no one can really see him. And he's known as the Last Blade. He is a black shield essentially, who is part of Inquisitor Riven's retinue. And you have Kentaro Santagar, who is leading the chapter in earnest. So we have gone over the lore so far. That is the first half of the lore. We're going to go into the second half of the lore next time, where we'll be talking about Mr. Fulgrim and what he's been getting up to with the Astral Blades when he's been attacking them much later on. But for now, let's look at some of our models. So we have Kentaro here. This is the chapter master of the Astral Blades, as you can see. You've been watching him for quite a while. And we have the back of him there, and he has the cloak and carmine there, which is a flaming... That is not an actual cloak, it is a flaming psychic shroud that he projects behind him when he's in combat, essentially. Or when he's about to go into combat. It is attached to his Iron Halo, which is essentially the Iron Halo of Kentaro Santagar is his helmet, which is why it's coloured gold, and it is attached to that, and it flows down all the way down his back as he's fighting. So we have the Blade Wing. So the new chapter, as it's reborn, is reborn into three wings: the Blade Wing, the Void Wing, and let me just get this. Yeah, sorry. The Blade Wing, the Void Wing, and the I was going to call it the Black Wing or the Dark Wing. So the Blade Wing are the first company, essentially. They are the chapter elite. These are the best bladesmen and swordsmen in the Astral Blades. They consist mainly of Blade Guard veterans in terms of their makeup and how they fight. And they serve as the personal protectors of Kentaro Santagar. They are his personal troops on the field. He doesn't really need protection, but he is the one who directs them where they go on the battlefield, mainly away from him. He likes to go off and do his own thing, essentially. But the Blade Wing are essentially the main men. These are the main guys going into combat. These are the veterans. There's only about 50 of them, so there's not very many of them, and they are under the direct command of the Legion command, essentially. So they're under the direct command of Kentaro Santagar himself. So The other wing is not called is called the Void Wing. We'll go into that in a minute, but I want to talk to you about. It was called the Dark Wing. I'm just reading my notes. It was called the Dark Wing. It is now called the Storm Wing because I took something from the Dark Angels back in the day, since we are Dark Angels successors, and they are called the Storm Wing. So the Storm Wing are the normal Space Marines, and again, these models aren't finished just yet. Their eyes need to be done. Their bolt holes need to be drilled. Things like that. But you're getting a strong sense of what these models are going to look like when they're done, when the chapter is ready to be fought on the battlefield as a whole. So the Stormwing are essentially your bog standard Astral Blades. So these are the main intercessor units are in this part of the army, and the assault intercessors also are in this part of the army. The assault intercessors are essentially the main core component of most Astral Blade armies. The main core component isn't normally the intercessors. The intercessors are the guys who have just joined the chapter, who are learning their ways. They haven't earned their blade yet, and they're essentially on their way to earning their fire blades. They're the smaller versions of the blade that Kentaro Santagar already wields. So we'll get into Fireblade next time when it's given to him, but we'll save that for part 2. As a chapter, and again I'll get into this into part 2. Part 1 was getting the foundation of the chapter as it was before we move into what it is. But the chapter after its breaking, the new chapter that Kentaro builds is much darker than the original Astral Blades chapter. It is a chapter of duelists, assassins. They focus on teleportation strikes and shock assault. They love spilling the blood of traitors. These are people who almost put the Carcharodons to shame with the amount that they go into on. There is no mercy from the Astral Blade. They have none left. Okay? The Astral Blades have no restraint left after what's been done to them. They hunt everybody that they see as a traitor, almost to a fault. Almost to a fault. They are actually reprimanded by Rabute Gilliman at one point for striking out against other Dark Angel successor chapters because they view them as fallen. So they say, no, they're fallen. We're going to go and kill them all. They are just an absolute nightmare to come across when when people are trying to get shit done. So, these are the normal intercessors. These guys have just joined the chapter and are working their way up to earning their blades, as you can probably tell. But this is the bog standard paint job that is going to be on most Astral Blades, if not all of them. So you have the silver and the pauldrons there are in purple, really dark purple. Again, I wanted to do it so that when I painted up a pre-fall Astral Blade, that they won't have much lighter purple, and it gets a lot darker as we go on and things like that. But then you have, obviously, some Astral Blades have taken to wearing things like the skulls of their enemies, of course. You have bits of flesh that they just rip off people that they've killed, things like that. So they're getting more and more extreme as we go on. And this is the close-up of the Intercessor there, of course, as we go into it. Okay. Excellent. And the back of the Intercessor, just so you can see what the paint job looks from behind. I like the burnished look of... I know people like the blocky look, but I quite like the burnished look of the armor. I quite like the fact that it looks like it's been shipped away, and it's got certain bits of it that are more... you can tell the natural colour is the darker colour, but it's been worn away a little bit by combat. I quite like that. Quite like that we're going for that type of a paint job. So the second wing, we've gone through the Blade Wing and the Storm Wing. This is the Void Wing, which is a wing completely unique to the Astral Blades. So the Vanguard veterans of the Astral Blades are all organised into the Void Wing, and most of these guys have started to suffer the effects of the sight to the point that their minds are starting to give in. They're starting to go. They're starting to just ebb away and ebb away onto the side of being more and more and more insane. They are led by the Shadow Seer, or the Lord Shadow Seer, who is the chief librarian of the chapter, as you're seeing here. And he's the one who basically directs them into battle. They don't need much directing. These aren't like Death Company Marines, but they are darker. They are more unhinged. They do need to be used sparingly, because if any other people in the Imperium see them fight, they're going to be like, what the fuck is this? Why are you just murdering everybody? But yeah, these Vanguard veterans types, as we play them on the battlefield, are extremely violent. They use dual claws at all times. They like to get involved and get in the face of the enemy. And they're used as a demoralizing tactic. So, should the Astral Blades ever wish to cause terror in the enemy, or drive them onto the... One tactic that they like to do is they like to slam down the Void Wing right in front of the enemy, right in their midst, and force them backwards onto the waiting blades of the blade wing, and of course the sustained bolter fire of the Storm Wing. That's normally how normal battles go against non-Astartes. Against actual Astartes, then the Storm Wing and the Blade Wing will take the Astartes on in a normal fight, whilst the Void Wing get in there and annihilate the command cadre of the enemy forces. That's generally how they do it when they go against the Astartes. And one of their main tasks in the current Dark Imperium is to go after either renegade, quote unquote, or renegade, or shall we say misbehaving chapters of other bloodlines, or even Dark Angel bloodlines. They really love it when they get to do that. So yeah, we have the again, not finished. Some more paint needs to go onto these, but looking good. Vanguard vets of the Void Wing. So they are pretty gnarly to look at, especially when they're on the tabletop. I have noticed on the tabletop people get, like, I only use them as normal Vanguard veterans, but people are, like, terrified of them when there's 10 of them and they're all just, like, diving in and saying, right, okay, we're just going to chop all this up now. So the following are not painted. Most of them. So we have the Reaver as well. A normal standard Reaver of the Void Wing. So we do have a lot of Reavers in our force, and a lot of infiltrators as well in the Void Wing. The Void Wing is technically one of the largest, if not the largest, wings in the army, which should show sort of the downfall of the Astral Blade as we're going along, unfortunately. Because more people are falling to the sight, more people are losing their minds, and we're becoming more and more unhinged as we go on. Essentially, I wanted to do a test of how far can I push a Loyalist chapter before it goes Renegade. So these are the Forlorn Watchers. These are the executioners of the Astral Blades, not painted yet. I've not worked out the colour scheme that I want to do. I might be doing black over that silver. But yeah, these are the Forlorn Watchers. These guys generally, well, they watch. They watch the rest of their battle brothers to make sure that none of them are going a bit stir crazy. They are the ones who decide who joins the Void Wing, and they mainly travel with the Void Wing to decide when enough is enough and a Marine has gone too far and needs to be put down because he's now a raving lunatic. That's what they do. They are in what is classed as Terminator armor. Okay, so this is a very staunch, very powerful set of Terminator armor, and they wield very similar blades to the Custodes going forward. They use that as their badge of office and as an execution weapon. And they have their normal blade on the left-hand side, which serves as their badge of office as an elite of the Astral Blades. If you have a black blade, it is termed as just that, a black blade, which is made from sheer adamantium that has a solid power core in it. It is an exquisite blade of ancient design, and it is seen as a badge of office for anyone who's elite. So the Blade Wing almost all have these blades, as you saw before, and obviously these guys do as well, the Forlorn Watchers. Most of the Forlorn Watchers are taken from the more stoic individuals amongst the people who are joining the chapter, who earn their way into the Blade Wing. Some of them will be selected to not go into the Blade Wing, but to go into the Void Wing as Forlorn Watchers. These people who generally watch, and they are led by, of course, the Lord Executioner here, who is a Psyker himself, hence why he's not using the lantern thing, but why he has his hand outstretched there, ready to crush somebody's throat. But yeah, in general, that's what we have in the Void Wing, the last specialist unit. We also have a nice unit of Eliminators here. So the Eliminators are part of the Storm Wing, but they also can be part of the Void Wing in terms of assassinating people and making sure that the key targets are going down when they're supposed to go down. These guys are seen as a necessary evil amongst the Astral Blades. The Astral Blades quite like close combat. In fact, we eschew almost all other forms of combat for close combat. But if you join the Storm Wing and you are a very good shot with your bolter, you may find yourself within the Eliminators of the Void Wing. Sometimes seconded to back over to the Storm Wing. But these guys, yeah, they are crack shots. They are there to take down specific targets that the Astral Blades can't quite get to because of the sheer press of bodies that are in them, or they clear a path to such targets. So they clear lesser targets out the way so that the actual Astral Blades can teleport straight in and start dealing with things. So if there's no space for teleportation, normally these guys infiltrate in, start clearing away, and now in comes the main force, teleporting straight from their battle barge. Alright, so we have the entire army here. So this is the entire army that we have so far of the Astral Blades. It's around 3,000 points, or 2,700, around about. We have 2 units of 10 Assault Intercessors, who are part of the Storm Wing. We have 30 Intercessors who are part of the Storm Wing also. We have you can see a chap in the front on the left here. The reason why he's not in this video is because he hasn't got a tip on one of his swords. I'm going to sort that out next time. It's going to be in the next video. We have the men on the left there, part of the Void Wing, the Void Wing veterans. We have the Void Wing Reavers on the back right there as well. We have the Forlorn Watchers on the back left, always watching, right at the back. And of course we have the Command Cadre of the Blade Wing surrounding Kintaro Santagar in the centre of the field right there. And of course the Eliminators behind them. So that's the full army. And there's a bit of a close-up on the Intercessors as they're all in one place. I love things like this. So you can see the guy in front there, he is our lieutenant. You can see on his right-hand sword there, he's supposed to have a he is supposed to have a hilt there, but it's been snapped off, so we need to replace it. But yeah, these are the normal Primaris Space Marines who are now part of the Astral Blades. So that is it. That is my first video on the Astral Blades. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did in doing it. It's taken me a long time to write and a long time to really get correct, if you know what I mean. A long time for me to really be happy with the way that it's gone and the way it's going. But I think we're on the right track with the lore. I might need to introduce some more stuff into the central lore right at the start, just to show you that they are Dark Angel successors. But at the moment, really happy with the way it's going, and really happy with the fact that the Astral Blades finally have their video up on the channel. We have a full model showcase there for you of what we've been doing so far, and hopefully next time I'll be able to show you even more. But for now, love you a long time. There will be a Hobby Nightmares video tomorrow. But it won't be a Nightmares video, it'll actually be a much more happier video. So hopefully you guys get to enjoy reading that or listening to that. And I'll speak to you guys next time. Have a good one.